Dimp Digital presents Idle Game Chat.
Cool.
Hello, apps here from Dimp Digital. Welcome to Idle Game Chat. This is Dimp Digital's flagship video game podcast, where we take you through the ups and the downs of the video game world. We are here on your favourite podcast app and YouTube, absolutely free. However, if you want to support our grassroots independent endeavour, head over to patreon.com/Dimp Digital and join the community. #hand in pocket. Once again, I'm joined by the reigning FGL Grand Prix winner. It's the resident referee. It's Logan. How's it going?
Yep, good. As always, happy to be here doing this with you. It's always a pleasure on our little Friday routines to do this.
Yeah, get it out. Early access for the patrons on the Saturday morning once I've done all the editing Friday evening. And actually, I save it till the next day now because I used to get so drawn out doing it all. Like I'd record, edit, do all the crap, and then I'd think, I can't do this. So now record, render, and then do all the other crap, but it goes out Saturday for the patrons. So that is one of the perks that you will mostly get. Again, never committing to 100% because I might be late. I might be late one week. This is not a professional outfit, so you kind of have to take the rough with the smooth.
People will be surprised to hear that, though, right? I mean,
will they?
Most people will probably go, "What? Not professional? Not full time?
Not full time? No." Be like work, wouldn't it, if you just did one podcast a week? And that
I always wonder who does like. Well, imagine what Rogan's doing.
What's he do? Three a week? 3 or 4 weeks?
It's something. Yeah, I mean, it feels like he does them every day. I mean, he obviously doesn't, but it feels. Imagine churning that out.
And they're 3 hours long. Yeah.
Yeah. But then he just goes, obviously, to someone and goes, yeah, there's your material. Get that up and sorted.
True.
Someone do the YouTube. He's obviously not sitting there.
And it helps when Spotify pay you millions of dollars to go over there.
Have a
just
chat.
outright. Yeah, to have a chat. I mean, it's crazy, but good on him, I say. It's excellent. The one true way to start a podcast is undisputed. It is delay news. And it's a little bit of a off-kilter one. The only reason I mention it is because it's in a Grand Prix team. So I'm trying to use the teams and the games that people have put forward in the fantasy gaming as like a basis of what to keep an eye on. And obviously I'll use my own logic where we've missed obvious games that are important. That sometimes happens. But the day before was on Mr. Adkins' list. Quite low down at number 9. But he's had his eye on this for a while. And that's hit another delay. Its initial release date was actually last year, and it's been crapped on. And there's been various sort of issues as to why. Some are saying it's because there's a legal dispute around the name of the game. Others are saying the game's just not ready again. I'd encourage people just to find a trailer of the day before, and visually, and it's obviously marketing material, it looks really impressive. But when you keep seeing delays like this, when it's coming from a relatively unknown team, concerns have to be raised. And now Adkins has got to sit there and think, right, if they've already delayed it once this year, is it going to be happening again? And are we going to be waiting for 2024? So he's got a little dilemma on his hands, whether he wants to do that. But the day before, knocked out of its initial 2023 release date. Anyway, speaking of the Fantasy Gaming League, we have some quite meaningful updates for this edition. First of all, let's start with Biff. Now, Biff's actually he's had a bit of a up and down week, to be honest. Number 1 game, Forspoken came out for Biff. Hit a score of 69. His first game out of the blocks has landed on a 69 at present on OpenCritic. Now, I called this in the group minutes before, well, maybe it was about 25 minutes before the reviews were dropping, saying, look, got a feeling this is going to get crapped on. Biff was hoping for minimum 75. I don't know why he's aiming that low. We always say 80s, don't we? That's what you want. And then 85s if possible. But yeah, Forspoken's come out and got a 69, so not doing too well with the critics. Any surprises there? I mean, I don't assume this was even on your list of your championship list, lurking, because It was highly anticipated. It is a timed exclusive on PlayStation. It's not developed by PlayStation. I think it's Luminous from Square Enix. They're the ones publishing it. But usually Sony usually put money behind decent projects that score well, even if they're from a third party. Like we're gonna get Final Fantasy 16 hopefully late this year. That doesn't get delayed, and that'll be a similar vein where a third party's been paid a bit of money to keep it exclusive. But a bit of a faux pas here potentially.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you exactly where I had it on my list. Bang in the middle, 13th, Forspoken, because I was a bit unsure about it as well. So, yeah, I mean, it's not. I wouldn't say it's hugely unsurprising. I just don't know why he had it so high up. To be honest,
We had it number 8. And you know the GP, you just get what you're given towards the back end because it's there's 60 games there. And
but even at number 8, I still think, well, I mean, it hasn't got, it's sitting there at number 5 slots down on mine. It could have easily gone even lower if I'd have probably put more effort into it.
Yeah.
Like, as in, if I'd actually properly thought about that, it'd probably be when I've still got Bayonetta and things below it. So you go, well, what are you doing, Logan? So, I kind of figured it'd never get down there. It was kind of just a list. Below 10, I was like, that's just a list that I can pick from. But it was 13.
Yeah. So it was lurking somewhere. But not doing too well, unfortunately, for Forspoken. I will say, when the game was first sort of revealed, it's called Project something to start with. I can't remember what it's exactly called, but it looked like it could be really good. Like I really liked the look of it and the way the parkour was kind of blended in with the combat, and the combat looked really snappy. And then when they released that demo late in 2022, and I got my hands on it, I thought, what are we doing here?
He played the demo, though.
I know.
This is what annoys me. He played it.
Said it was shit.
Said it was shit, so he knew what he was getting. And then still went, I hoped it would get better. It's like, it really annoys me when people do that, because very rarely have I played any kind of pre-release that's been markedly different from, like, version 1.0.
Yeah.
It just isn't. What they've done and what they're showing you is basically what the game is, bar a few tweaks. It's like, if you didn't like it, you've only got yourself to blame sometimes.
No, it made me laugh that when he revealed that in the group, I forgot he'd played it, and you just responded saying, didn't trust his own eyes. Interesting.
It's like, why ignore what's in front of you and your own, like, why would you put something in your list that you don't, I mean, not everything in my list will I play, but if I don't play it and I haven't played it, then I'll be relatively sure that it will at least review well. And it's like, there was no guarantees this would review well, and he didn't like it, so it shouldn't have been there.
Strange, bizarre behaviour, but that's Lonely's team. And to be honest, he said it's all over, and I quickly remind him that you won with 2 below 70 games in your list last year, so it's not all over at all. It's everyone. I think at least it'll be a really good run if someone in the Grand Prix got 80s across the board, simply because there's 60 games in the whole, competition required. It's just so difficult. But what he will be pleased with is that Dead Space Remake has hit the reviews, and at the moment it's climbed itself up to a score of 90. So an up and down week, as we said, for Mr. Biff. That actually puts him in the lead of the Grand Prix. He's the only person out of 2 games, 159 score, and an average of 80 now, which is not to be sniffed at. So that Forspoken's almost been papered over immediately for him. It's kind of bowed him out, really. But more kind of, I guess, relevant to you is one of your Grand Prix games. So you've now got Dead Space at 90, which Biff gave you. Adcock gave you Fire Emblem Engage 82. You're sitting on a lovely 172 score and an average of 86 after 2 games. Getting out the blocks early. Was this the plan? I mean, you can't plan because you didn't know what people were going to give you, but it's a tactic that can pull off.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad Dead Space was pulled in. I think Fire Emblem I had down at like 15th on my list, so it wasn't. I'll take an 82. I think generally you just want to avoid dropping into the 70s early doors, I think, is where I'm at. So, yeah, reasonably happy. Obviously, I was semi-confident Dead Space would do well, barring any catastrophic disasters in that remake. But I think it was one of those ones that looked like it was going to be pretty close to a banker.
Yeah.
As close as you get to it. So, I'm pleased that one scored well.
No, indeed. And I thought this would score well. If you again, it's all betting game. If you're asking me to bet, I'd say I'll bet on it scoring well. But there's always a chance that, particularly when EA are involved with anything, that somehow they botch it. But this time the Studio Motive have pulled it out the bag. Looking forward to getting my hands on it and playing it at some point. Not urgently rushing towards it though. So probably going to be maybe the first time it jumps on sale on the PlayStation Store, or even it's going to come on Game Pass within 12 months because it'll be on EA Access. So I could just bide my time. It's not like an urgent piece of story that I need to. I've already played it. It's kind of similar to The Last of Us Part 1. I know it's great, at the very least. So it's something to worth diving into. But no, good times for you. Parky's still not off the blocks yet. I'm just trying to look for his team. And I think, so Company of Heroes 3, I believe, will be his first scoring game. But he's going to be, by the time we get to March, he could be 4 games behind. And then it's that mental game, isn't it? You'll be looking down the barrel of your scores and think, hang on, how are we going to pull this out the bag? And that's when silly decisions like Paper made last year of subbing out Tunic in desperation come back and bite. So you must be well happy with this so far.
Yeah, it's definitely better to get in front and get your games out, and then you just sort of feet up a little bit. You feel it's definitely less pressure, but the great thing that I'm enjoying about this is really you pick your people, and it's in the lap of the gods. Like there's no choice involved until you start getting down to those transfer windows. But I think the roster that I've got looks pretty good. So I think there's one on there, which is that one that Paper gave me. But beyond that, I think it looks semi-solid. So I think there's only one that I'm really targeting to perhaps consider subbing out. But I'll chat to Paper about that closer to the time.
Yeah. Well, we spoke about Kill the Justice League, the Suicide Squad game, on the last edition, about it being a game, potentially having game as a service elements, whether it's cosmetics or not. And I was wondering whether that might be, I'm not asking you to give away the game plan, but whether that's something you might, based on that new information, whether that frightens you off, because they are hard to nail, as we spoke about. Like if you get them right,
hard to score as well. Because if they're doing and releasing things,
I think it's going to be more like The Division, where it kind of is, but it's kind of not.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
that's all cosmetics, isn't it? As far as I understand, I don't think there's any stuff you can get and you can play it cooperatively. I think it's going to be more like that personally, which kind of is and kind of isn't, but comes with its banana skins potentially.
Yeah, I mean, I had it. It was number 9 on my list. That it kind of does change it, I think, because you go, well, is it just going to lose 5 points because it's got that over its head more than anything? I might have to have a look at that. But again, I'm semi-relaxed about it. The problem is, you make a sub, it costs you 5 points anyway. So it's like it's got whatever you sub in, it's got to have at least 6, a banker almost, or you've got to be gambling on that you get at least 6 points out of it for it to be a net positive decision, which is a tricky thing to do.
No, absolutely. Well, that's the Fantasy Gaming League update, which we will do as and when required. It's usually on most episodes because simply the games are coming thick and fast, and looking forward to seeing how that pans out. Let's get into the main meat here. How do I do this? Let's just quickly do the Game Developers Choice Awards. So last edition I spoke about the DICE Awards, which is like the industry as a whole's kind of short list of Game of the Year and different categories. And then we've got the Game Developers Choice Awards, which is just those registered as developers. So it's kind of a slightly different audience, but largely the same. And they've announced the nominations for all the different categories. Very much similar to the DICE Awards, really. We've got Elden Ring and Stray with 6 nominations leading the charge. And God of War Ragnarok has 5, whereas DICE had God of War Ragnarok with a few more. Nothing really to talk about other than just to mention it, really. I just feel like these awards should be paid more attention to. They seem to get forgotten about, even though these are the guys that are making it and are in the industry. Probably have, like they always say, the Keeleys are the Oscars. But the Keeleys are done by the media, mostly, and a bit of the audience. The Oscars ain't done by the audience. The Academy do it. The peers. So let's focus on these ones if we want that. Oh, but there's no game announcements. Well, there you go. That's where we're getting into the slippery slope of that. But
What would you prefer there? I've interrupted you deliberately, but if someone said to you, you can have the adulation of the fans or the
what makes
adulation
more
of the
money?
peers.
That'll be my answer. Someone can run the data on that.
So would you prefer for all the fans to just vote this the best podcast? And in the industry, they're all looking down at it going, oh, they're talking about bins and getting awards. or would you prefer all your peers to go, the quality of that podcast and the production quality and everything is like excellent, but the content isn't hitting, like isn't the most popular. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of like, because I'm not saying you can't have both. It could be like a really popular and well-produced podcast. But if someone says you can have the adulation of the fans or the adulation of your peers, what would be more prestigious for you?
Look, I'm a man of the people. You've got to go with the fans. Fuck the establishment, all that bollocks. You can stick it up your arse, podcast awards, academies, if there's one out there. That's what I'd say, because then with that, like I said earlier, you're probably likely to get more money. Based on if more people,
they're the ones that pay the bills, basically.
They're the ones that pay the bills. But I mean, we've spoken about the Golden Joystick Awards, which is like the fan one that runs, and I think 2021 they gave it to Resident Evil Village, and eyebrows were raised, and you kind of think, well, that's the trouble when you leave it in the hands of the fans. They make some odd decisions, but yeah, I'm back in that man of the people, the People's Podcast, the Academy Award podcasting realm of snobs. I mean, if Rogan ain't on that, then it's not an academy worth having, is it? That's the thing. He's the man, really, when it comes to that. So that'll be my answer to it. But Game of the Year, they've got Elden Ring, God of War Ragnarok, Immortality, Pentiment, making its appearance in there, Stray, and Tunic. And once again, Stray obviously crapped on because it don't deserve to be there according to people. It's about a cat. I wonder if that's anti-cat people.
There are people that don't. It's weird because you generally don't get many people that don't like dogs, right? But you definitely get
some
people.
are scared. Adkins is scared of dogs. Reveal that bit of information for
Man's
people.
best friends,
Well,
like
that Davey's not.
Well,
attacking.
I mean, they pick up on that energy or the scent, don't they? So if you go in there and go, look, do what you want, I don't give a shit. I mean, it's tricky sometimes because when you see them Rottweilers come and you go, whoa, if this goes wrong, I'm in trouble, whatever happens. So I can't just put on a brave face. But generally, that's how it operates. But you do find that people just for some reason just go, nah, cats are shit, or don't like cats. You go, well, what? For what reason?
No.
I don't understand it.
I don't get. I mean, look, I get annoyed if they come and shit in the garden.
Yeah.
Now, that is an irritation. I've got a water gun now. But that's because they kept sitting on the fences aggravating the dog. And I thought, I can't have him slamming his head into the fence because, A, it's an expensive bill and I don't want to be... A, it's an expensive bill for the fence, but if he's got to go in the vet to have splinters removed, then that's like £100
double whammy.
Yeah, exactly.
Essentially.
So they can't be sitting up there teasing him. I don't know why he headbutts things, but that's how he gets through his life. But generally, I'm fine with them. I like them. They're little... If I go in someone's house and they've got a cat, I'm happy to sit there with it and stroke it. They're cute. But
I think if you'd have done a game about a stray dog,
different
attitude. I mean, some might say that they've missed the golden goose there. Like that's the ultimate championship.
Yeah, that would have got like Elden Ring scores. That'd have been inflated for sure. The only thing is, with doing it with a dog, I guess mechanics wise, they can't be jumping up things and. You know, they're not really as agile. The cat is more of an interesting, kind of vehicle to play as in a game, I would say, mechanically. Because I watched that fucking bully walking around. He's quick, but he don't really do a lot. Like, he can't really do much. I don't
know. I mean, if you saw one of my cats, I mean, it's just the most unagile. It literally looks like, your cats are... Well, I've got two cats. One of them's super bouncy, and I go, yep, can see him in Stray. The other one... You hear him, like they jump out my bathroom window and onto the roof of the extension, and it sounds like a bomb's gone off.
Yeah.
Like, and you go, well, he ain't going to last long in Stray.
No.
So he ain't getting up all them windowsills and whatnot. But, I take your point. It's pretty tricky to get a big old Labrador and go, right, get up there.
Yeah. So
ain't happening, is it?
Be interested to see what they do next, the developer there. But as we go back to Stray, don't crap on it. It's fine. And maybe it is the anti-cat sentiment that's doing that. Anyway, that's the Game Developers Choice Awards nominees. We'll report back on the winners and no doubt have a equally as uninteresting chat about that. The real meat, really, is the Xbox Developer Direct, which took place. Now, just for context, I watched it. I've watched it twice, in fact. I'll explain why in a second. But I sent you the link to the stream, which is about 40 minutes, 45 minutes long. And I said, here's a roundup of all the stuff. Read that and pick what you want if you can't be asked to watch it. And then evidently you watched everything basically that's available just in piecemeal items. Yeah. And even accidentally watched the sort of extended showcase of ESO, which was about 30 minutes long. I had to scan through that.
Well, again, in full disclosure, I did a lot of fast forwarding in that because there is a lot of waffle and a lot of irrelevant. Like, it's like the first 5 minutes of that clip is just waiting for it to start.
Yeah.
So I was like, what are we doing? Cut that down properly.
Wow.
But yeah, I did. I didn't really realise what I was getting into there. And do you know what? Again, full disclosure, I was like, I've played this game. I was like, I don't. I mean, I say I've played some of that game.
Yeah.
I was like, do I really need to see? Yeah, do I really need to see the DLC? But I thought should do my research. But there wasn't even any real gameplay in it, so that was a waste.
Took it a step further. So initially I watched it with Adkins on twitch.tv/dimpdigital, did a live reactions kind of stream for that.
Mm-hmm.
And we were absolutely not paying attention to it whatsoever. I was in there just talking absolute bollocks, taking the piss. Hall was in the chat. And it was just, I didn't even download it and publish it on the YouTube channel. I thought that's an embarrassing stream, really. It's just not even close to quality or insight required. It was almost like we'd been pissed up and just gone on there, and we hadn't. So I don't know what happened there. So then I watched it the next day. They basically upload the 4K version of it, and I was like, right, this is probably a better way to do it. So I bunged it on. I said it's 45, I think it's 44 minutes exactly, but minutes long. So the actual style, I guess, of the developer direct is the new kind of way in which they're trying to communicate what they're up to. I quite liked. I said nice and short, length was good, sort of in this weird like artsy sort of style. Fine, don't really care about how they transition from one game to another, but I liked the mix of hearing from the developers sort of, you know, they were obviously egging the game, like massively bigging the game up and all the features and whatnot, but over the top of their chatter they're showing gameplay examples, so you get to see the game kind of working. CGI took for the most part, but I mean everything they showed had mostly gameplay in it. They may have had like a little bit of CGI on there, because that's my big thing. Like, don't rock up to these things and show me a CGI trailer. I don't care.
Yeah,
it don't mean anything. Not having it anymore. But what did they do? 5 games in the end in the 45 minutes. So I think rather than going sort of chronologically into it, I want to just pick your brains and pick out from you what interested you the most, and then I'll touch upon everything. But out of those sort of 5 games that were chucked out there and you got to see, what interested you or got that brain working the most?
I guess the most intriguing game is still Redfall, and probably for a few reasons. Is because it could be good.
Yeah.
But I'm also slightly worried about it because I feel like it's one of those that could go either way. And I look at it and I'm like, oh, it's a bit of a Left 4 Dead. I mean, I won't say it's like Left 4 Dead. I mean, it is in terms that it's a co-op, but it's got that vibe about it, but with vampires and open world, and you think there's something there that could be a good experience, but there's also something that just worries me slightly about it. I don't know. I feel like they're trying to promise the earth with it, and that concerns me. It's kind of like, and when I watch all these things, they go biggest ever, better ever, most ever. Like everything's always like biggest, better. It's always like built from the ground up, and it always just is a bit kind of like, come on. Like,
is it
though? But yeah, I like the look of that. I think it could potentially be. I mean, if that goes on Game Pass, for example, it feels like that's a no-brainer for a couple of us to play. Again, whether we get the required crowd and organising that is always a problem. So it might just end up being like me and you or something again, Division 2 all over again.
Yeah.
But I like the idea of it. I don't think it's the sort of game that you'd play on your own, personally. It looks like it's going to be definitely a better co-op experience than it is a single player. But I like the look of that. As always, I think Forza looks good. Like you can't say it doesn't. So I thought that was interesting. And then that bloody hi-fi game.
Hi-Fi Rush.
I don't know about that. I don't. I've downloaded it to see what it's all about because it's no harm, no foul. It's on that Game Pass right now, so it looks
Stealth,
like it could
shadow
be.
drops, excitement, buzz. Good or poor decision? I think it was quite clever because that's all people were talking about afterwards. Like, oh, I get to play this tonight, and because it's,
I think it's
because it goes to Game Pass, like you said, it's the no-brainer for many people. I mean, Ronnie's not going to allow that unless he's committing to finishing it, but most people will try it at least, and you kind of generate a little bit of buzz there. I thought that was really clever, particularly, as I said, because of the Game Pass model that's there. It really just lends itself to, oh, that's quite exciting. I'll jump in whilst everyone's just buzzing about this, and we'll all see together how good it is.
Yeah, I mean, I quite like the idea of going, as you say, like a shadow drop like that. Go, oh, you can go play it now. Like, I think that's quite a cool thing to do. But yeah, it's kind of come out of nowhere, hasn't it?
So absolutely.
I think you said you've got that there. I've got it there, and then sort of see if it's that. Sometimes just looking for that palate cleanser, and I think could it be ideal palate cleanser territory? That's what I'm looking for because I'm coming to the end of that God of War, I think. So I kind of want something just a little bit more, a little bit lighter to play after that. So hopefully it is.
Yeah, no, I agree. Just going back to Redfall, we've got a May the 2nd release date coming out.
Yeah.
Which is very close to Tears of the Kingdom, 10 days before, in fact. So Zelda lurking afterwards is on the. Am I going to dive in and play Zelda day one? That's not a guarantee. But I know lots of people will. And do they want to be really starting that Redfall and whatnot 10 days before? I don't know. I'm just saying if I was in that crowd, I'd probably just wait until after later on in the year, and then by then other games will be out, and then you think, well, when am I going to get around to playing it? I'm still not completely sold on Redfall. I'm not. It feels like I think Adkins may have sent it around and said this feels, or said it to me offline. He said it feels like Deathloop from a year and a bit ago, where they kept showing it off, and people were like, I don't understand what's going on here, or what the purpose of this is, or even whether I want to play it or not. Like, they couldn't convey the message. When it came out, it reviewed pretty well. I think it sat on an 88 or an 89, and people were calling it, this is going to be the new platform for video games in the future. Absolute nonsense being spouted when that first came out. So this could be another one of those. It's the same developer, Arcane, although it's a different studio within that. It's the Austin branch rather than the, I think it's Lyon for the other chaps. But my main issue with this game is, yes, you mentioned it's got the co-op elements, and I think, well, the Division 2, the Division, like I know I can get on board with those and enjoy those sorts of games. Here's the stickler for me, and I don't know if this has been rectified or if this ever will. The co-op progression, the campaign progress only persists for the host. And how... I don't know how that works. I don't know how that could work in a group of 4, because effectively you have to do the campaign mission 4 times if you're being fair to every member of the group, and you're all progressing together. I don't know how you feel about that. I mean, that seems like a massive blower to me. Like the Division 2.
Yeah.
We will play it. I'll be host. You could be host. If we do a campaign mission, it ticks off for both of us. Great.
Yeah.
In this, not going to be the case. Concerning.
Yeah. I don't know why this gets struggled with. But I don't quite understand why
it's been fixed. That's what annoys me with things like this. We've seen it, other examples of other games fixing it, getting it right. So why are you getting it wrong still?
Yeah. I it baffles me. It really does. It makes you wonder, doesn't it, whether like what's going on in them brains.
I can only assume it's some sort of technical thing they couldn't get over or didn't have the time to.
It can't be that hard.
Well,
it's just tick it off for both of us.
Yep.
If I go in that area and I do that mission, it goes, yep, get a great big tick.
But you might be out of sync with your story, and I'm like, okay, if I'm at chapter 6 and you're at chapter 12, and we do chapter 13, I understand. For me, that's a big problem because I haven't done the other chapters. In that case, I think, of course, it doesn't tick off for me. But surely the game can recognise we're both at the same campaign stage. We're both doing this mission. We're both ticking it off, and then be done with it. And then we're both going through the game naturally. We haven't got to keep reverting back and saying, "Oh, sorry, Logan, I've run out of time today. We have to do that another week." And you're sitting there going, "Well, when am I going to get that ticked off?" I just think it's just going to create an annoyance. And I know that this may well be Ronnie's brain of wanting to finish things and campaigns and whatnot, but I don't know. That just feels, from a multiplayer perspective, generally a poor way to do it in a cooperative environment. Like, same with Destiny. I think that ticks everything off as you go when you do it. Like, that's the way to do it. If you're going to encourage cooperative behaviour and offer a 4-person team, the logistics of going through the campaign itself would be a nightmare. And maybe the game will have a shortish campaign, which is filled with side quests, in which case it's not really an issue. Or maybe the world changes in certain ways, unique to your game. But at that point, we should be doing single player and scrubbing off this multiplayer to it, shouldn't we?
I mean, I think I'm relatively. I'm not that fussed about. I don't know. I don't really know how to word it. So, if we played through a game and I completed it, but then if I tried to go through it myself, it'd say that I haven't done any of it. I'm not too fussed about that. Does that make sense? It's not something that I'm ever going to go, or I'd ever go and do 4 missions on my own anyway.
Yeah.
Like, so if you were the host, you'd go, right, you're the host.
I'll get
it progressed through, you get it ticked off, and I'm just essentially in your game doing it with you. As long as I kind of got recognition for that.
Yeah.
And when I went back into your game, I don't know. I don't know. I don't really know where I stand with it. I kind of just think it's an established. Like, if I went back to Destiny, it wouldn't say I haven't done anything because I wasn't the host. Like,
no,
do you know what I mean?
No.
What you're doing is you're doing the same missions, but you're just doing it together.
Yeah.
You're not doing it on some. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of just shared progress. It should just be standard. I don't really understand it.
No.
So are you saying that is definitely going to be the case?
As of last year, so they've come out of it in interviews. Redfall Game is from IGN. Redfall game designer Harvey Smith told IGN that the campaign progress will only persist for the host of a co-op run. That means if you join someone else's game, complete a level, you still need to complete the same level on your own campaign to progress. So back to your point, if you don't care about your game, your save, your instance progressing, you could in theory just keep jumping into like mine, who's obviously going to have a real hard time not allowing that, and experience the game like that, and you'll still get all the loot and the shit that comes with it. Just if you decide to go out on your own, like you may do in the Division now and again, just to tweak your weapons and whatnot.
Yeah,
the instance of your world won't be reflecting the actual progress you've made. It's more of, I mean, I'm sure there's people that don't give a toss, but for me, that just feels an aggravation that's not necessary. But that wasn't even shown in the gameplay. That's the thing. We've gone off piece there. The actual what was shown was never suggesting that. But I think it's worth keeping that in mind for people out there that are looking to do this in a group. That if you've got people like me that are going to cry about progression, then you're going to have to make some compromises or just do the thing over and over again, which, if it's good, as we've seen with Destiny, people are happy to do. So if I'm rewarded for that with decent loot, maybe I wouldn't care about going back in and doing it in your world. But again, seems like a fixed problem. May the 2nd, we will find out, I guess, how that all comes together. And you can't really predict Arcane games, so who knows?
Yeah, I think that was the one that intrigued me the most. But again, I think, again, I just hope I want good games. I'd like it to be good and saying that gets reviewed well and that we both want to pick up. But it sounds like we'd have to make some sort of concession for Ronnie, which is
Well,
understandable.
Ron's going to be
That
the host,
happens.
isn't he? Well, it's not even worth starting.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
That's what it'll be. I don't know. We'll see. But they showed a good meaty part of it. I will say the way they showcased the game was a little bit pedestrian. They showed a lot of slow moving, like not stealth, but creeping around. And I was like,
it didn't look dynamic, did it?
No, in a co-op world that just doesn't happen because you've got people like Hall screaming off forward and looking for the fight. So
yeah.
I don't know. I mean, maybe the game's perfectly playable single player, like the Division is, and it's kind of down to the your choice of the players. That may well be a factor when we've not really explored. Is perhaps the single player option is actually perfectly viable, and it's just perhaps a dungeon or the higher level sort of difficult group missions that you'd want to squad up for. It could be one of those where beat to beat, there's no value in having you or me along for the ride, but when we get to a point where there's like a certain clear down area, maybe we can both do. But again, it'll only
I'd come into your game, do it, and go back to mine, and I still got the same. So you'd have to do it twice.
Yeah.
I'd go, right, I'll come into yours and do yours, and you come into mine.
Yeah,
what a pain in the arse that would be.
Not ideal for Redfall, but we will see. So you touched on Forza Motorsport, and I was wondering how impressed or unimpressed you were with this. I think the main surprise was we didn't get an actual release date for it. It just said it was coming 2023. I was sort of working off the assumption that most of the stuff here would get some level of release date, and it did, other than Forza. Visually hugely impressive. Like, certainly looks fantastic, as you would expect, really, for a car game on a console. I mean, it's no disrespect, but they are usually the showcase for the graphical fidelity and whatnot. They were waffling on about how the audio's all unique, and I was like, well, come on, we don't really need to know about that. Dynamic time of day and weather finally been added, so it took 8 entries to do that, which is good in 2023. New physics, over 500 cars, 20 environments, etc., etc. I must say I warmed up to this a little bit, but always I caveat that comment saying I like motorsport. It's called Forza Motorsport, yeah, but it's ain't true motorsport. This is like it's sort of motorsport light, and there's car collecting to a certain extent as well. But it's going to be on Game Pass, so for yourself it may just be something you try. But what do you reckon?
I've been yearning a little bit for a car game to play.
Horizon.
'Cause I didn't. Yeah, I know, but
Arcade Toot.
I don't know. There's something about Horizon that I've gone off a little bit, and I think what I want
because
is
you had 5 of them in under a decade. They fucking saturated the market and went, whoops.
They did, yeah.
Unnecessary, greedy.
But I kind of think, again, Game Pass. You go, well, no harm, no foul, other than the 150 gig download that it's probably got. But I think I will give it a go. I mean, whenever it arrives, I do like a driver game. I used to love Gran Turismo and everything. And I've been toying with the idea, do I go with something like that? But again, this is the beauty about having both consoles, is you can just go, well, I could just pick up Forza for free, basically. Why would I buy Gran Turismo then? So yeah, I think I will give it a go. And see whether that sort of racing piques my interest a bit more than the Horizon stuff. But it looks really good. Like the way that all the they go all ray tracing, this, that, and the other. I go, well, forget all that. Like, how's it actually going to look on my console? But it looks like it's going to look really good. And sound really good. Everything's built from the ground up, more cars than ever. What I said before, it's kind of like bigger, better, built from the ground up stuff. So yeah, I like the look of it.
Yeah. I mean, I'll definitely read up about what the campaign's like, and if it's not a massive, horrible grind and all this, I may well just dive into it and have that as sort of like a little game to play once a week or whatever, because they can be quite therapeutic. But
yeah, I think so.
But yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing when the release date is. Sounds like it's going to be second half of the year, to be honest, which is no great disaster. I know some people cry and say, well, they said it was coming in the first half. And it's like, well, I know, but just wait.
Yeah.
Just wait. Trust me, just wait. You'll be better off for it. And that'll be Forza Motorsport Turn 10, working on that to return. We touched upon Elder Scrolls Online, which is basically they were talking about the next chapter, which is the Necron expansion.
Yeah.
Fantastic. I have a lot of respect for Elder Scrolls Online, despite playing through it once and not really sticking with it. But I was in a different mindset back then, so chances there. I will say the sort of 5 minutes they showed in the developer direct was, I don't know, it felt like a really good sales pitch to me. I was actually like sitting there thinking, cool.
Should play this.
Yeah, and I had to stop myself and think, no, stop with that nonsense. But there was definitely, because I've been talking, we spoke with Paper actually a few weeks ago about New World and talked a little bit about doing like a solo MMO, which seems counterintuitive because it's an MMO, but actually we didn't explore the conversation properly, but we've had it offline a few times about how it's just nice to have an active backdrop of players and worlds, but quest to quest, just sort of going through it on your own, at your own pace, doing your own story, not having Destiny Dave down your neck saying, right, we're doing the expedition now, you got to get to level 60, and you're like, fuck me, I've got to race up to there. And just going at your own pace. So look, not saying I'm never going to download it and play it again, but I thought that was a good little pitch. And the one thing we haven't mentioned is poor old Minecraft Legends. April the 18th, 2023, Mojang at it. They were sort of showing off the PvP mode, seemed to be the focus of this. Looks like it could be a laugh with a few mates, but other than that, it's a Minecraft game that's been wedged into another sort of genre using that awful aesthetic that we're getting away with these days.
Yeah, the thing is, right, my whole perception on games like that has changed because of Roblox. And my niece is newly 10 years old, and literally all I ever see her playing is Roblox.
Yep.
And every weekend,
get her on the podcast, chat about it.
I don't know what it is. It's just a huge sandbox, and just people just build. It's just all player community built maps and things. It's just a really. But I look at it and I'm like, how's that? Like, what's this? And I think I said like to mum and dad, I was like, how much do you think you spent like on Robux, like the currency in it? And they were like, probably 500 quid at least. And it just makes you go, well, you got all these companies that develop games for 50, 60 pound a pop, and you got something like that that's chucked out there, and in a year or two, 500 quid spent or something. Like, it just makes you realise it's just reassessed my whole perspective on games.
Yeah.
And even something like Minecraft, I'd sort of look down at it like you did there and go, how are we getting away with these graphics? But it's not aimed at 35-year-old me, is it? That's what I've got to remember. It's like there are other markets and segments that these people are building games for, and clearly Minecraft they've bunged it on iPads and Amazon tablets, and all the kids have got it from age 3 upwards. You got that whole market where they're going, you can do all this stuff in it, and they love it. So that's where it's all going. But yeah, I mean, it's certainly not for me in this life.
No, I mean, Legends is obviously a separate take on it, and it's sort of like an RTS type thing. But this particular mode they showed off was essentially there were 2 teams, and the idea is to destroy the other player team's base. But there's AI enemies you can fend off. You can go and like round up mobs and stuff, and use that to take down the opposition base. It had a bit of like kind of some MOBA elements to it.
Yeah.
But obviously not. I don't think it was using the sort of traditional free swim lanes that they use. But it comes at April the 18th, 2023. That is a co-op or nothing jobby. Personally, can't see it coming out. But we must say, with all this whole thing, just wrapping up the developer direct, the Xbox finally showing out some games for the first half, and Shadow dropped Hi-Fi Rush. We've got Redfall coming in May. They got Minecraft Legends coming in April. Elder Scrolls has got another chapter coming in June, I think. And then Forza coming sometime this year. So it's better than last year. Like, if we compare to what we got last year, already they've kind of, volume-wise, are going to be ahead of that in a couple of months. So
it's such a low fucking bar.
I know.
Like, it's it's almost an embarrassingly low bar.
But this is a good foundation for the year. This, we have to build them up here and give Phil the benefit of the
friend
doubt.
of the show. Yeah.
And I hope they can just build off this for the rest of the year and keep going. If they can keep churning out even stuff that I might not play, but like Hi-Fi Rush, I've downloaded it and played a few hours. Now I've started it, I'll finish it for sure.
Yeah.
That's a nice little tickler to have just had suddenly. And
that you're not expecting, perhaps.
No, exactly. So I think it was a good effort from them, and given the circumstances, given comparing them to last year, absolutely we're on a better path. It feels like, although as we know, the wheels can come off quite quickly. Anyway, we're going to transition to the last segment of the podcast for this edition. And we've been talking about it a lot recently, and particularly in this episode, I've cited it a few times, sort of dropping little foreshadowing. And also last week, I accidentally mentioned it was in the can, so I gave away the game. So it had to come out this week, and it's the Division 2. Logan and I finished the main... Well, it's not even vanilla campaign, because what we found out later on is there's been 2 or 3 years of added free DLC, which is great, that we kind of got snarled up in towards the back end and didn't understand what we were supposed to be doing. So that's all coming to you for the second part of the podcast. But we will see you on the other side. Here we are then, back with some game impressions to close out this edition of Idle Game Chat. I'm once again joined by the resident referee, Logan, and we're here to do a double review impressions, whatever you want to call this garbage, of the Division 2. Finally, we got through the Division 2 together.
I can hear everyone in the background going... What? Like, now?
What are you
Did
playing
the game
at?
come out 3 years ago? You would probably be correct.
March 2019 was when the game originally released. And we didn't get it at launch from memory. I think we got it when it was 20 quid at some point on the Xbox One at the time.
Yeah.
And then what transpired was there was a couple of false starts, us jumping in and kind of doing maybe no more than 5 hours and then dropping it. Then we got close to new gen or current gen consoles coming out, as in the Series X this time, and there was like we were perceiving that there was going to be a patch to unlock the frame rate, and we were correct. So we kind of waited until Xbox Series X came out, gave it another go, I think last year, so over 12 months ago, fell off the horse again, and then in the last few months we've managed to be pressing ahead and getting through it. It's been a long process though, so we'll get into all that exactly, but that's kind of just setting the marker of what we've done here. We did both play the Division 1 or the original Division, whatever you want to call it, so cards on the table there. I'm going to ask you the question. I don't know if there's going to be any memory here, but how do you remember the Division, the original? Like, I've not let you go back and watch the old video. I've not even listened to it, but it may be wildly inaccurate now because I think your perception kind of changed over time. But the original, because obviously there was something there to drag you back into the second one when the price was right.
Yeah, I think I remember enjoying jumping into it. I think we played it probably more than we think we did. I know we spent a fair amount of time. We definitely had a number of excursions into the dark zone. We saw the whole campaign through. I think it was pretty much me and you, just between us. With
I was going to say, was it just us two?
Dropped in. I think Adkins we might have had a couple of drop-ins, but
Adkins played it with someone else through. Got annoyed because they were talking through the cutscenes and said, "Oh, I'll come back through it with you boys." He did one session with us and then binned it.
Yeah.
So he went up for the challenge again.
That sounds about right. But yeah, I think, we played it through, completed it, did a bit of Dark Zone endgame stuff, and then went, yeah, that was all right. And that was my recollection of it. To be honest, I remember it being pretty close to what we played through in Division 2. I don't think there was anything hugely different about the game, and I don't think we should be too surprised about that. No. But I think we generally went, yeah, that was all right. Pretty much enjoyed that on the whole. So yeah, I think we both pinpointed the Division 2 when it was coming out and thought, we enjoyed playing through that. that first one. We'll do the second one when the price is right.
Yeah, that was the key there, wasn't it? When that price was right, it was the.
It's
That was
not
the
one of
time
them
to jump in.
games. Yeah, it's not one of them games for us where we'd be like day one, day dot ready,
No.
pre-downloaded and everything. It was just one of those where it's like fine to play when it crops up around that £20 to £25 mark, I think, which it did quite quickly, I think.
Yeah, it seemed to be. I think that happens generally with games. If you keep your eye, because I think we may have got it off of. Because Xbox, you can buy games digitally outside of their Xbox store. Sometimes like CD keys have games on there, which are in the UK anyway, pretty good for cheaper digital products, whether it's Steam or otherwise. They got a few PlayStation, but not many. But they had a lot of Xbox stuff that was historically on there. So that absolutely was something that we were diving in on, and it did take us three, maybe 4 stabs to kind of get through it. I don't know if that says anything about the game other than our own sort of lack of determination at points, because I don't feel like there's any reason why we dropped it the few times before, other than just I'm one of those people that if I'm not told what to do or when to play, I'll happily just let things slide, knowing that I'll get out of it. Because you know me, I like to sit there on my own playing stuff. So
yeah, I think that was also around the time when Warzone had just kind of crept onto the six. So I think I remember speaking to you a couple of times about, right, we were going to do it. And I think both of us the motivation had to be there from both of us, I think. And I'm not saying that solely on your side. I think sometimes I was a bit like, well, I'd rather play other stuff. But it aligned eventually for us. I think eventually we went, right, this is still sitting on my hard drive. When are we going to get round to it? And we went, right, 1 day a week.
That's
guaranteed day. We know that's locked in until it's done. And we both went, yep, done.
And basically, it took, let's be honest, it took maybe 4 months. Thinking total.
It felt like, to be honest, it might even be longer than that.
It could be slightly longer, but we were very disciplined. And was that because we didn't want to play it anymore because we weren't that enthralled by it? Or were we just being sensible? Because I think we got in a bit of a state with Outriders, especially at the back end, where we did like a 8 to 9 hour session to get it over the line and left extremely annoyed.
2 a.m.
We were pissed off that the game had decided to have like a difficult ending sequence, and because it was at the tail end of an 8-9 hour session. So I think there was lessons learnt there not to try and force the issue. It was like, we'll play for a minimum of a couple of hours once a week. Yeah. And if we fancy it, maybe we'll chuck out a slot. I think we may have missed 2 weeks, but it was a good 3-4 month endeavour to get where we were. May have even breached into 5 months. So I think that discipline helped the game. It helped it from my perspective anyway, because I get tired and fatigued with these types of games if I play them too much. And there's always that pressure that you think, well, the other person wants to get on with this and get it done, and therefore you're playing more than actually you want to. Whereas I felt like we were both at least like once a week, no more, no less sort of thing. We were both happy with that. There was no.
I think we both know the signs as well, right? Like, I can tell when you're getting fatigued, and you can probably tell when I'm getting sloppy and things like that. And we're pretty good at both going, right, should we knock it on the head there? So I think generally for this sort of game, and I feel like if we did it any more than we did, we would have got fatigued, and we would have started to, one of us would have started to be like, right, we need to get through this now. And I know the last couple of sessions I was on at you going, we'll do it this time, and you were like, I don't want to set that expectation. But it was pretty disciplined. I think we got the time pretty much spot on. I mean, I personally, from my perspective, it's not one of those games that I could probably play for 6 hours or something, 5 or 6 hours. There's something about it that just becomes a little bit wearing. And I don't know why, but
could you play something like Warzone for 6 hours though?
No.
Yeah, or just traditional Call of Duty multiplayer. Are the days of 6 hour stints and anything gone? I guess is what I'm angling at.
Broadly, but for different reasons. I think Warzone.
I can't imagine.
It gets. I can do things. I basically have to break things up. So I was playing the other day, played a few games of Warzone, jumped onto Rocket League, a little bit of a palette cleanser, do a little bit of Pentiment, then I can go back to it. But you just start hating it. Like, if you do too much, you do. You just start despising it, especially something like Warzone that's largely, you lose more than you win. And that's an inevitability on a battle royale. I guess like things like Football Manager, I could probably play for 6 hours because you're setting the pace.
Yeah, it's quite passive, isn't it? You can literally
Yeah.
just sit there and do nothing for 20 minutes,
You
and
could just go off scouting or
Yeah, exactly,
or setting up a set piece routine like that. Something like that. If I got into it, I could do, easily. But I think gaming wise, I think it's difficult for me to sit there for that long and do things. It can be done, but definitely not for Division.
I think my telly, which is to my left here, as people that are watching it can maybe see in the shot, I think it's got like a 4-hour timer on it.
Yeah.
So that'll flash up after 4 hours, and so when I haven't meddled with any of the volumes and stuff, which always happens if I'm using a headset, 'cause I don't need to. And when I see that now, I'm often like, okay, now it's time to wrap this up. Find the next stage. Like if I've been playing for that long, I don't often do, but I use that as a little trigger point. I'm like, I'm probably on the brink here. If I go much longer, I'm going to start getting fed up with things, which is not how I want to be doing it. So I actually use the telly to stop myself from overindulging at times. The little marker it will set off and say pack it in.
I think it's a pretty good system, if you like, to have, where for any game, arguably, I think even if you're really enjoying it, if you spend that long on it, for me, one of the things that I've tried to do, I mean, back it when I was playing Call of Duty 4, like the original, it was really easy for me to literally just waste away all down a game.
Yep.
But I over the years, I've kind of learnt not to do that as much. I still can seep into it and do. I think really 4 hour sessions are about as long as I'll tend to go. I tend to get fatigued.
Yeah. So I guess the point of that conversation was to maintain that this isn't necessarily specific to the Division 2. Like our disciplining approach was, I think we may have played for 4 hours once tops, but it was usually it's somewhere between 2.5 and 3.5 hours generally. And I think we kind of both knew that once we'd done a milestone of sorts, we'd be like, right, let's knock it on the head for today. No harm, no foul, and then we'll be back same time next week. And it was a very disciplined approach. The other thing to mention is that in terms of how we kind of went about managing the game, there's lots of different activities to keep on top of: side missions, main missions, collectibles, shade techs, fucking echoes, mobilizers. We were basically, you handed over the reins of controlling that to me and said, you get Ronnie to sort of get us from A to B where we need to go, and I'll just follow along. And again, I think that helped, because when you've got two people squabbling over what you need to do next, you're not going to have a good time, are you? Whereas this was like, right, you do it, and I was like, okay, I'll just kind of logically go into clear down mode, which we did. We cleared down a lot of what this game offers. All the available side quests done, all the main missions done. There are maybe 2 or 3 years worth of post-game content that's been bolted onto the back of this, which we went through as well. I think they're actually 4 separate content updates is the way they rolled them out. We kind of did everything we could. We even did a weekly invasion, got through that sort of loop, which was something we wasn't planning on doing, but found ourselves halfway through where the game hadn't quite communicated to us what we were supposed to do in terms of the next main mission. So we'll get to some of those issues there. But here we go. The Division 2. We played. I think mine was about 55 hours for my character that I've got on there. So it's quite a long time. Yours was probably about the same. Maybe a bit more, a bit less, because I know sometimes you'll be on there fiddling with your inventory, which I know you like to do without me rabbiting away in your ear hole, saying, "Where's On the Road gone?" You're like, "Ain't here apps. They've changed it." It's one of those things. But what did you like about this game? Because it's not. It follows a full. It's clearly angling towards a live service formula, but because it's third person, I kind of feel like it feels almost fresh in a way, and it's quite grounded. It's it's not sort of wizards and weird shit. It's technology-based combat with a little bit of a glimpse in the future, like the drones and whatnot, which probably do exist actually. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
They are lurking, but there's definitely a little bit of futuristic by 5-10 years maybe in there. But in essence, this one's set in Washington, so a change from snowy old New York, a bit of colour. Anyway, Division 2, what are we liking?
Yeah, so I think you've kind of hit on something there. It's kind of very relatable. I think that's the first thing, and especially, considering the settings and the likeness, I guess, to the situation we've had over the past few years, without giving any huge spoilers away. It's basically as a result of a virus, and it's kind of gone into this, and it's just beautifully ironic, and some of the things they talk about and everything are kind of relatable, which I think is quite interesting.
It would have been funny.
Play some of this.
It would have been funny playing it back in 2019, and obviously not knowing what was coming. And we probably would have gone, what a load of old toss.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. It kind of seems really far-fetched.
Yeah.
And then after you've been through the pandemic piece, you go, well, is it? Because
it weren't far
the
off.
stuff we're talking about here, trying to find cures and things, it's quite interesting. So I like the relatable nature of the game. I think, the point that you make, it's quite grounded in terms of, you got the White House and things there, and these sort of big landmarks that you're familiar with. The fact that, it's I mean, I'm reluctant to say it's realistic because them
bullet sponges.
When you find yourself shooting rounds into someone, it kind of removes yourself from that. But ultimately, the setting, I think the environment's really good.
Yes,
that's one of the things that I do really like about it is the environment, the fact that you've got these dogs running around and everything like that. The core gameplay, no, I'm reluctant to say it's good, but it does what it's supposed to do well. I think that's the point. I mean, I often find, it's a cover shooter by nature, and sometimes the fact that you're just shooting these bullets and the guns are rather uninteresting mostly. You just find yourself sitting behind cover, just shooting others and trying not to die. But fundamentally, the mechanics for the majority of it works. And I think it wears a little thin as you go through it, but I'm kind of fine with it. But I think I just enjoy the loop. I think the loop is, until a point, the bit that I enjoy, sort of building a character up, the usual buzz of picking up an item that's better than what you've got, and trying to sort of build your character according to your play style and things, is the fun part. So, I think broadly, playing through the story, some of it's largely pointless, but some of it is interesting. And, Antoine's lurking. We've got some characters that we like and things. And I mean, I'm not going to say it's groundbreaking gameplay or groundbreaking story, because I'd probably say it's sort of like good, but it kind of just ticks the box just enough to kind of keep you going through it, I think.
Yeah, I'd say that the core mechanics are enjoyable. I think that's important. It's perfectly playable and functional. You kind of understand what to do, what not to do. Like, I push my luck sometimes running forward and dropping a turret on people's toes because I don't know, I felt like that was a worthwhile risk to take because it really got up them, especially if you got it near their spawn points. But generally, you don't want to be doing that. Like, you kind of understand the rules of engagement are pop out of cover, shoot, get behind cover, reload, try not to take any damage, etc., etc. And it all works as good as it did previously. I like Washington as the change up from the map as well, because it was just New York's not an uninteresting area, because it was just blanketed in snow. It got way too samey, and Washington does get samey.
After block, wasn't it? It was just like block after block of snowy shit, and it was a very dull. I mean, again, you go back to that setting, like that's the scene they're trying to set. But after you've played it for 40 hours, you're like, God, just a bit of sun or colour or something more interesting wouldn't go amiss. Yeah,
we've got a nice sunny Washington here with a bit of colour. One thing that I think we definitely both found frustrating was when it was wet and windy and raining, you couldn't see anything. Now, some people claim realism, but when you're trying to get through a fucking end-game mission of high gear scores being required and little mistakes, it's a frustrating time. You're just looking at red sort of icons appearing open, you're hitting them. So,
but we said that half the time, didn't we? We sit there and go, apps, I don't know about you, but I can't see anything. I'm literally shooting where the red dot for the enemy is and just getting hit markers.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was a bit of a blower. And I like the general loop of it. I actually enjoyed the sort of second phase of the game, if you will, because there's a point where your leveling goes from sort of 1 to 30, which is like the core game, and then I know it's even an end game situation because it feels like there's about at least the sort of not quite half, but a third of the game left, kind of in this change. When you hit level 30, it goes to what people recognise as a traditional gear score. Each individual item has its own score, and that contributes to your kind of overall power level, if you will. I actually really enjoyed that part of it as well. That change felt like it came at the right time, albeit if it was clumsily implemented. In that you kind of got to this stage where we felt I was making a lot of progress, and it kind of reset everything. And I was like, well, why has that suddenly happened? But outside of that, once you kind of reset and you go into these world tiers, which have a cap on the gear score for the enemies, it made sense. But I do feel like both of us were struggling to understand it to start with. I think it's a general problem with the games. It wasn't clear necessarily how things were working, or where to go next, and what the weekly invasions were, where the next main campaign were, side quests. But pulling it back to the change in the gear score, that wasn't particularly well explained either. It was kind of like, what are these world tiers? Do we have to do the world tier change? Can we just stay here? None of those questions are answered until you sort of took the plunge and went down that road. But I don't know if you agree or disagree with those sentiments.
Yeah, I think the one thing with
because you're much more experienced in these type of games than me. I'll just come along for the ride occasionally with people. So this is Logan's area.
You're bang on. I think I was just a bit confused why, because they give you like these. Once you hit level 30, you get this like specialism that you can choose that then creates this sort of branch, and you get a new special weapon to use. And I was just once I got there, I was like, this is fun. Like, why have we not had this from the start? Why can I not work through the different specialisms and play around with them as I go through the game? It just seemed like it seemed like a good thing, but I was just confused why we didn't get that from the start, or at least earlier through the game. So I think it would have been interesting to use some of that as you went through it. So it was kind of like a good change. It was something different to do, but I was just like, why haven't we had this
earlier
from day dot?
Or from day dot? Yeah, I mean, it's a strange. I don't know. It's kind of. I've seen a lot of games do it. I played New World. It's an MMO. It's got. I think it's level 60 is the level cap. Once you get to that stage, it goes to gear score. So it's quite a common, I guess, mechanic in there. But
I'm fine with the gear score.
Yeah.
And that it was just kind of like. So I picked a class that gave me a crossbow, and pretty much throughout the whole game, I was going, "Can you imagine if this game had a crossbow?
It would have been much
fun that'd be."
Yeah.
Like it just adds I feel like sometimes the weapons in the Division are just a bit dull.
Yeah.
Like understandably, but just adding some variety and something a bit more interesting just sort of added another layer. And I was like, I've already played 30 hours or something at this. At least, like, why have I not played 30 hours with a choice of a crossbow or something else? Like I don't know.
Yeah, I agree with that.
My overriding feeling.
It felt like it was a bit of a day late and a dollar short to introduce like stuff that genuinely was fun to use. Like I had a little grenade launcher I could use, and my turret I could upgrade to have artillery or like a mortar type fire. And I was like, this is amazing to use. And we're kind of at the back or the arse end of the game, and only now getting to use it. And the frustrating thing with that is that, as with many of these games, it reuses locations, reuses areas that you've become familiar with, just changes the enemy or the enemy type or the level of the enemies. I was like, this would have been really cool to use in something new and exciting areas. Now, I must say that in some of the stuff they've added since launch, so the post-game contents, there are new maps that have become available. They're not like big sprawling cities, but there are new locations for you to go off on a helicopter to go and explore. So they kind of have done it, but again, you're at that point, you're 30, 40 hours deep, and you're probably thinking, Christ, where have they pumped all this into? But I appreciate that they at least made that change, because had they not, and it stayed on the standard, level 30, it would have been very boring, I think, at that stage. And they clearly recognised that, we're going to make a change here and actually offer you some new items to play around with, and like you said, new sort of gear to play around with and level up.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's just the thing throughout. Is I felt like a lot of the gear was pretty hollow. Like there's a lot of focus on these games about harmonizing the right gear with the right, but ultimately it just feels like you just need the numbers.
Yeah.
And that's all you end up doing. You just, if it's a higher score you put on, I think that's the thing that I'd like to see it do a bit better going forward. Is somehow make. Like there's a whole crafting system, and you can do a whole load of other stuff, which I have to admit seemed pointless. But I don't understand why it's in the game.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, I actually did I think the second world tier we went on. I crafted all my armor and all my weapons, using the crafting thing. And what it did is it kind of gave me my gear score almost to the max of the current world tier level. So rather than relying on picking up, I don't say I was using a sniper rifle, picking up another sniper rifle that was a higher score, I could just craft it out the gate. But obviously they don't want to give you the top number because it would be too easy just to craft things. Perhaps again, I think it suffers with the same problem that a lot of these games tend to, is that it's system on top of system related to system over there, but you can also buy it in the shop. Then you can dismantle it and use those components to craft it. But if you craft this version of the same weapon, you get these components. It was just like, I don't know how to even efficiently manage this. I'm just gonna never craft anything. And at the end, I started using it, and I fortunately had enough resources to do it a couple of times. But it was just too much at one point, and I was like, you know what? I don't know what's going on here. I don't understand what this. How you can kind of build your character towards. There's different colours, wasn't there? There was like a defense colour and an attack colour, and I think the yellow or the golden one was to do with your special, your core ability, and you could like buff that. And I was like, I don't need to be doing this. Yeah. And that's one thing I do appreciate in the end game sort of situation. It didn't feel impossibly hard. Like it weren't these Destiny raids being chucked out there. It all felt doable if we were sensible, which I appreciate because when it started turning, do you remember I was like, Logan, they're going to make this impossible. I'm already getting tired of this, and they're going to make it impossible, and it's got to be min-maxed, and there's going to be all these, and it wasn't. It was perfectly fine and doable. It's fair, and we got through the content without much, not overly resistant. I think we died a few times, but nothing to get stressed about.
Yeah, I just think it felt largely inconsequential. It doesn't really matter whether you're too far under level, or if you're at the right level, like what. It all just felt a bit superficial, I think, in terms of the numbers, and I'd just like to see a bit more consequence on it. Really,
wants it harder. I said I wanted it easier.
I don't want the.
Do you want Outriders back?
The one thing that I was thinking, was some sort of class-based system. It's kind of like, rather than just going, you pick a character and then everything's there, so that both you and I could have turrets, both you and I could be healers. Like. You should be right. Your character is a healer, or you're an assault player, or you're a tank. Like I feel like that kind of you can choose already up front what sort of character you're going to be, and that will give you abilities and technology and things that support that class. I just feel like that might be a bit more of an interesting way to play the game. I think the thing it struggles with is it's kind of like. Everything's available, which you could say is a good thing, but just trying to pull that back into like something a bit more manageable with it, I think would be beneficial, because it just feels like, as you say, there's all these things: defense, special, attack, this, that, and the other. Colors. As we started getting into it, you go beyond sort of like the legendary yellow color or whatever, and you go into like this green color, and it's like, well, where's this come from? Yeah, but I just think something to just refine it a little bit, and then some meaningful crafting system. If it's going to be in there, then I should only be able to craft certain items, or I should be only able to buy certain items, or I should only be able to pick up items from certain missions. Again, you're just saying, well, you can sell stuff, you can deconstruct stuff, and have parts and money. It's kind of like, I think the thing that I always struggle with is, where do I focus it? Because anything and everything goes, which is you could say is a positive, but I find slightly overwhelming. That would just be my thought on that whole ecosystem.
I do wonder whether it's a symptom of it being solo and up to 4 players, like having to balance it for someone on their own, for example.
I don't know who wants to play this on their own.
Well,
I just don't. It's surely it's got to be a minimum 2-person
jobby
thing. Yeah, I think that's one of the good things that Destiny did when they were doing this, was they went, look, this is the amount of people you need. Like, if you ain't got that, you're probably going to do it.
Can you imagine if we got to second from last mission and it said, right, need 4 players for this suddenly?
I know what you're. But Destiny set the expectation early. When you need 3 players to complete all this, so you play through it as a 3, and I'm sure we could have dragged someone else along for the ride.
Well, they wouldn't even let us in our own clan. They weren't going to reinstall it and bloody play through a mission with us, bastards.
But do you see what I mean, though? It's like
I get what you mean. But everyone knows that going in, or they should know that going in. But I maintain I'd have been royally fucked off had I arrived towards the back end.
Agreed. Yeah, and it does some poor matchmaking. You get some idiot in there who's fucking it all up. Yeah, I mean that would be the worst of both worlds. But I think, I agree. It probably is trying to cater to all audiences, but it just feels a bit, because it's doing that. It feels a bit unplanned. Like you're not playing it. You don't know how they've intended for you to play it, so therefore you're not really sure what you should be doing with it.
Yeah,
and it doesn't guide you along the way as to what it thinks you should be doing. It kind of just leaves you to it.
Yeah, no, this is fair comment. It's not easy though, I guess, to balance things like that and have it so that you can play, from 1 players up to 4. There's all these considerations that they've got to factor in. I wonder if ultimately that they want you to say, right, once you get to the final world tier, here's the top gear score level, then build your perfect soldier towards that, because everything else gets chucked away as it does with these level based games. You're chucking away the last thing, so really you can only focus on that sort of ultimate version of your character once you know the ceiling is not going to move again.
Yeah, true.
But I don't think we had any intent to max level. We just wanted to get through the content at that time. So we've already kind of transitioned to some of the things that we perhaps didn't like. I mean, and I mentioned it earlier, the lack of kind of continuity between the core game, what serves as the end game but comes probably a little bit earlier than that, and then also the bolted on post game content, which has been there for a number of years now, left me fumbling around in menus trying to figure out exactly what we're supposed to do, because I think our mission statement was do the collectibles, do the side content, do the main missions. Anything else that's interesting we'll try once. Like we'll do a Dark Zone mission once. We didn't even go into it, I think, again after that. I think we did it once. So that kind of really interesting potential dynamic mode we pretty much binned this time round. But where we were quite focused on doing story and side stuff, the game kind of tripped over itself, and you probably won't have seen it because you weren't in the menus trying to figure out what's going on, but you verbally would have heard me going, I don't know what we're supposed to be doing here, Logan. Like, I can't work out where we go next, who we're supposed to go and see. And then just to top things off, there's side missions that are hidden for some reason. They decide to implement that, thinking that people are going to scratch around in every last inch of Washington to find it. So I found the whole transition between each of the relevant phases really annoying, to be frank. But that was because I was sitting there trying to manage it all, and I had you breathing down my neck going, what are we doing next, apps? And I was like, oh God.
To be honest,
give me a minute.
I'm quite happy. And when we've played these games before, I'm like, I'll let you dictate proceedings in what goes in what order, because I know Ronnie's quite particular about that. But it really is a saving grace in this game, because I even struggled at times, didn't I, to go, I don't know where you've gone. Like, the biggest problem by far is that map. Like, I don't know why it's so unclear, like, where people are and what's next. Like, it's diabolical. It's so filled up with shit. It really is a minefield to try and navigate. So I am relieved that you took on that burden, but I can fully appreciate why you probably hated every moment of trying to figure all that out, because they certainly don't make it easy. And
no.
To that point around those hidden missions, we spent a good morning, didn't we, between us, trying to figure out what fucking missions we had and hadn't done between us, and then where these hidden ones were that we hadn't done, to go back and do them. And eventually we figured out that I think there's 3 that we can't do.
No,
and it is, but that was just ludicrous. There's no reason at all in these games why side missions should be hidden away. It's ludicrous. No. I can't fathom it.
Well, the Outriders did it as well. There was a hidden one that wouldn't appear unless you did a couple of specific things. And I was like, so I remember seeing the achievement for that, and it was on like 99%. I was like, what have we done there? We've done everything that's on the map. I think we even went back and replayed a mission on Outriders because we thought it hadn't ticked it off. And it turns out it was one of these hidden things. I'm like, what are you doing? Why do you do things like that?
It. It's like, just relying on luck
I
or
don't. Right,
thoroughness.
if it's fucking Elden Ring, where nothing is told for you for
Yeah.
most of the game, so okay, I understand. I'm gonna have to scratch around to find things here. In a game like The Division or Outriders, where every other thing is just listed on the map, free of charge, you just direct exactly where to go. There's a waypoint that comes up showing you the route. Why bother introducing hidden little missions that you won't find unless you scratch around in very specific areas? I just don't understand that, because it's not one of those games. It's not an explore. Even the mobilize appear on the fucking map when you get near them. They tell you where they are. They're supposed to be hidden or collectibles. It's kind of like you've made this choice and trained us just to follow the map. If it ain't on there, it ain't getting done, is it? For the most part.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway.
Yeah, you just work through it. Yeah, it's bizarre.
Yeah.
I completely agree.
And the other thing that I think pissed us off both quite a bit was out in the open world when we're trying to do said activities, whether it's a control point or taking down a bounty, for example. Towards the back end of the game, the maps seemed to get far more populated with skirmishes that were taking place in close proximity to activities. And as we mentioned, this is a cover-based shooter, so you want to know your enemies in front of you so you can sit in your cover and sort of hide as best you can when you need to. When you've got a skirmish that's happening behind you or in front of you as well, we got pincered a few times because for some reason a scuffle broke out nearby, and then they'll train their eyes on us, and we're like, right, we're exposed here because we've got these geezers in front of us and these hounds behind us attacking us, trying to blow us away. And it just seemed like that became more and more of an issue as the game went on. As more and more activities were sort of just layered on top of one another, we were consistently getting snarled up in struggling skirmishes. It was somewhat fun like the first time, but I was like, I just want to get to this mission part again, and I'm having to deal with this war between all these different factions.
Yeah, it wasn't even necessarily that they just blurred and blended into one another, didn't they? So you'd be taken on one side.
And it goes, supply drop kicking off now. I'm like, what's going on here? That's not on the map.
Yeah, and you're sort of trying to work your way through it, and you're going, well, what's next?
Bounty in the area. Oh, what the hell?
Yeah. And it just become a bit too chaotic. So yeah, and it's sometimes when you just want to get something done as well. But I said it multiple times, didn't I? It's like, give me a vehicle or some method of transport to encourage me to go through this world a little bit quicker, because expecting me just to walk everywhere or run is irritating, and there's no way of avoiding these people. We tried sometimes, didn't we, just to run past, and then the first person triggers it, and then all of a sudden the person behind is just getting the arse shot off them. It's just... It's like there's enough going on here. Like, really, I want that outside piece when I'm not in missions to be relatively quiet.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want the stress when I'm traveling between stuff of having to deal with all this crap as regularly as I had to.
No.
So yeah, I think that did become a bit irritating, didn't it?
Yeah.
To the point where we're just going to have to try and avoid this as best we can.
Yeah.
Don't, keep your head down and nose clean, and don't get involved.
Take a wide berth around anything, because it might just cause chaos that we didn't want to have to deal with. Any other things you didn't like that we haven't touched upon, or even did like? I guess anything that we may have missed in the earlier part.
No, I think the main things were just us trying to figure out the story, and the core mechanics are fine. Like, I'm fine with all that stuff. Nothing else I think I need to call out.
No, from my perspective, actually, one thing I should mention: we played it on the Xbox Series X, and it was a 60 FPS patch. Ran on my system anyway beautifully. I think we had one session where we had a few connection issues, but that was one over what, 24, 3, it could have been 20 or 30 sessions. I think there's one where you dropped out perhaps randomly that neither of us could understand why, but generally the game ran from my perspective really well, like nice slick 60 FPS, which kind of vindicated us for waiting and for that patch to go in, and it looked for the most part pretty good for what it was. It's a last gen game, obviously wasn't spruced up in any way. I think they may have pumped the resolution slightly, but generally served its purpose and performed really well. Didn't notice any major bugs. I think we got caught on the geometry a few times. getting stuck, and we slag off the falling mechanic because it looks so weird when you drop half a meter and they go "Whoa!" and throw their arms up in the air and snap back. It's all a bit.
It sort of happens in slow-mo a bit, doesn't it? Or it looks like it does. It doesn't look very natural, but that's just part of the Division.
No,
or gameplay.
That's the way it happens, isn't it? Well, I've got nothing else to add other than to ask some of the poignant questions about this gaming gallery. And obviously, as usual, we pull outside of the doors. Electric car, so that those emissions aren't being pumped in there before you get us on that. Although they are there's a guy up the road that's got one. Then you've got run over by him. You can't hear him.
Well, it's a problem.
How are those guide dogs going to get on with that? Or do they watch? I don't know how they suss it out. I imagine they use their ears. But anyway, going off on tangents as we usually do. Do we get out the keys and wander into this gallery and start to look at where it could potentially be showcased in your own personal exhibition?
Yeah, I think we do. Yeah, I mean, it'd be a shame if 60 hours and it doesn't even make it through the doors. So yeah, I think from my perspective, we definitely go in.
Yep, same here. I'll chuck it in there. I'm not against this finding a way into the showcase somewhere. So we've arrived at your lovely exhibition that you've got full of all these fantastic, great games, and they're all categorised with your own personal kind of opinion and grading on them. Where does the Division 2 sit for Mr. Logan?
So I'm going to put the Division 2 in all its glory into silver.
Silver?
Yeah.
Lovely jubbly.
I think, just for, I guess, a little bit of rationale, I think, everything in there, the core gameplay, there's nothing fundamentally wrong with it or technically wrong with it. I think there's, some gripes around how they've structured the end game. I think we discussed it off after we completed it, and we sort of said, I wonder if that would have appeared slightly less bitty if we'd have done it at the time. But it definitely felt a bit.
Yeah.
And I think it does everything it intends to pretty well, but doesn't really excel to the point where I think it would probably go into a gold or a platinum rating.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
The majority of my time was pretty enjoyable, some frustration with it, but yeah, overall enjoyed my time in the game.
Yeah, I will be slightly harsher and drop it in that bronze category. And again, I think you raised a good point at the end there about had we played it as the content was rolling out live back in the day, would it have made more sense? Almost certainly we would have not been as lost in some of the end game or the later game or even the post update stuff. But where they just haven't put any effort in to kind of bring a new player along for the ride as we played it kind of in our time, sort of three and a bit years after release. So I have to ding it for that because I found that highly frustrating, trying to manage and deal with all that and keep you happy and get us into the right place where we need. Because like I mentioned earlier, we did a weekly invasion by accident because the tracker said, it basically says like a priority of what you should do next. It suggests like a side quest or a main quest. And it was suggesting these invasion missions. And I was like, oh, maybe you got to do that to unlock the next main mission. Turns out the weekly invasions reset every week, and it's the live service or continuous element of the game. In that once you've done it for that week, you get a reward for that week. Like you would with many other games, and then that's your lot. You're off. It doesn't actually do anything. You get some nice gear, but it doesn't progress or unlock any sort of new content. And we got snarled up and did like 5 missions. I was like, Logan, I'm sure we've done these missions before. And we was like, well, we're not too sure. And then the final like crescendo mission was like, no, we definitely have done this before. This is now nonsense. Turned out the main mission we were trying to go was on one of these kind of off Washington maps. And for some reason wasn't showing on the sort of like main map area that there was a mission there available because we hadn't walked 10 yards further before coming out of it. And that was just one example. I mean, it was happening. You didn't have to deal with it too much, but constantly I was grappling with where to go, who to see, how to kind of maximise this and get to some of the more interesting stuff rather than redoing bits and pieces. But like we mentioned, the core mechanics are sound. I think it's been a reasonably successful franchise, at least from my perspective. I've enjoyed both the games, and they're not really my style of game, but done a good job of keeping me sucked in there. So a bronze for me on the Division 2, a silver from Logan on the Division 2. The only question left is that we've got the Division Heartland that's touted to be released. Free to play, I believe, is the aim of the game. There's also a mobile version. We'll ignore that. But what's the appetite for Heartlands? If and when it arrives?
I'd need a rest, I think, is the first thought on it. But yeah, I enjoy the game. It's not without its faults, and I think that menu system or anything is diabolical. But I like it. So yeah, I think I'd be definitely interested in picking it up again.
Yeah.
But with an adequate break in between.
I agree. We've been talking or discussing potentially getting the expansion, which is the Warlords of New York, which takes you back to the New York map. I think we both agree that's got to be on at least a 50% offer for us to do that. So we may jump back into the Division 2 and perhaps return with thoughts on the Warlords of New York expansion. So keep your ear to the ground here for everything Dimp Digital. If you've made it this far in Idle Game Chat, we appreciate your eyes and ears for this episode, but nothing more for us to say here other than thanks for your time and ta-da.
This was a Dimp Digital production.